My name is Mona Jensen, and I'm 29 years old. If you had asked me a year ago what my life looked like, I would have told you it was simple but happy. I thought I had everything I needed: a stable job, a cozy apartment, and a boyfriend I loved with all my heart. But happiness is fragile. Sometimes it slips away slowly without you noticing, and sometimes it gets ripped out in one single night. Hey. That night, I came home from work carrying grocery bags, humming a song I'd heard on the radio. It was a Tuesday, the kind of ordinary Tuesday where you expect nothing more than leftovers, a shower, and bed. But as soon as I reached my building's hallway, I saw the boxes stacked neatly by the door of my apartment. Brown cardboard taped shut. My heart dropped. For a moment, I tried to convince myself Marvin was just decluttering. He'd mentioned wanting to simplify after reading some minimalism blog. Maybe he was finally serious about it. But deep down I knew. Something inside me knew. Marvin. I called setting the grocery bags on the little entry table we'd picked out at Target 2 years ago. I still remember how he'd joked about whether a $50 table could hold our relationship. We'd laughed then. I wasn't laughing now. He came out of the bedroom carrying another box. His shirt was crisp, tucked in his hair, styled with more care than usual for a weekday night. He looked like he was heading to a work function or a date. And his face, I knew that face. It was the look he wore when he'd already decided something, when there was no room left for me to change his mind. "We need to talk," he said, not meeting my eyes. I glanced around the living room. More boxes. The picture frames that used to sit on the mantel were gone. The throw pillows he'd always complained about also missing. My stomach twisted. What's going on? He set the box down, smoothed his shirt, and finally looked at me. "Mona, I'm leaving. I found a place downtown." The words landed like cold water dumped over my head. My throat tightened. Leaving. What do you mean leaving? Did something happen? Did I do something? Is this about money? I know the apartment isn't perfect, but it's not about money, he cut me off sharply. Then he did something I'll never forget. He looked around the room as though he was really seeing it for the first time. His lips curled and his eyes filled with something I had never seen directed at me before. Disgust. Pure disgust. "God," he muttered, "I can't believe I lived like this for 3 years." I followed his gaze, trying to see what he saw. The couch we'd found on Craigslist, the one he'd been excited about because it was real leather. The TV we bought on sale last Black Friday, small but functional. The curtains we'd picked together at HomeGoods, laughing over whether the pattern was too bold. This wasn't luxury, no, but it was ours. It was home. "I thought you liked our place," I whispered. I convinced myself I did. He gestured around with a dismissive sweep of his hand. "But Vanessa's place has floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city. This looks like a college dorm room." I froze. Vanessa. My chest constricted, the name cutting through me like a blade. Of course. His coworker, the one he'd been mentioning for months. The Porsche, the rooftop dinners, the endless little comments that had made me uneasy. "When did this start?" My voice shook. "With her." He paused just for a second, and for that brief second I saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes. But it vanished just as quickly. "It's not about her, Mona. It's about me. I finally want more from life than this. Than safe and predictable." Safe and predictable. He said it like it was a crime. Like being steady, loyal, and loving wasn't enough. "So that's what I am to you. Safe and predictable." My hands trembled at my sides. "You're a good woman," he said, and somehow that hurt more than if he had called me worthless. "But I need more than good. I need exciting. I need someone ambitious, someone who wants bigger things." I stood there staring at the man I thought I'd spend my life with as he reduced 3 years of love, laughter, and promises into a disposable chapter. I wanted to scream, to beg, to shake him until he remembered the life we'd built. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something inside me broke too cleanly for that. "So our 3 years meant nothing?" I asked. "They meant I learned what I don't want," he said coldly. He kept packing as if I wasn't even there. Efficient, almost mechanical, as though he'd been planning this for weeks. Maybe he had. He finished, set the last box by the door, and grabbed his coat. He didn't even glance at the grocery bags I'd dropped still sitting by the table, like evidence of how ordinary I thought this night would be. "I'll come back for the rest this weekend," he said, keys jangling in his hand, "when you're not here." And then he walked out. Just like that. 3 years of love reduced to a Tuesday evening, a pile of boxes, and a slammed door. The silence after was unbearable, not the comfortable silence we'd once shared reading on the couch or watching Netflix. This was a suffocating silence pressing against my chest until I couldn't breathe. I sank onto the couch, the one he had just dismissed as pathetic, and stared at the room we had called home. Every object suddenly felt tainted. The bookshelf where his thrillers sat next to my romances. The kitchen where I'd made him chicken parmesan every Sunday. The dining table where we'd played cards on rainy nights. To me, these were memories. To him, they had been nothing but placeholders until something better came along. My chest tightened, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. I had thought betrayal would feel sharp, like being stabbed. Instead, it felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left me with nothing but echoes. That night, I sat awake on the couch until dawn, staring at the apartment he had mocked. I kept replaying his words over and over, "I feel sorry for whatever man settles for this." I wasn't sure which hurt more, the fact that he had left me, or the fact that he made me wonder if maybe, just maybe, he was right. The first morning after Marvin left, I woke up to silence so heavy it felt like a weight on my chest. For 3 years, I had grown used to small, ordinary noises, the sound of his alarm going off too early, his footsteps padding to the bathroom, the clatter of a spoon in the kitchen as he stirred his coffee. Without them, the apartment felt like an empty stage after the actors have left, just props and echoes. I found myself standing in the kitchen, holding 2 mugs instead of one, pouring coffee into both before realizing no one would drink the second. I dumped it down the sink and laughed bitterly at myself. That was the beginning of 100 small reminders. At the grocery store, I caught myself picking up his favorite granola, the one with dried cherries, only to remember he wouldn't be there to eat it. I still recorded his favorite late-night talk show out of habit, until one night I realized the DVR was filling up with episodes I couldn't bear to watch alone. Every corner of my life had been shaped to fit him. Without Marvin, even the air felt unfamiliar. But the worst part wasn't the silence in my apartment. It was the noise on my phone. His face popped up on my screen almost daily, not because he called, but because of Instagram. Marvin had never posted much when we were together, but with Vanessa, suddenly he was a curator of his new life. Rooftop cocktails, Napa wine tours, candlelit dinners at restaurants I couldn't even afford to glance at. Every photo was the same Marvin. With his arm around her, her designer dress glittering under dim lights, both of them smiling, like they had discovered the secret to happiness. One caption stung more than all the others. It was a photo of her high-rise apartment with those infamous floor-to-ceiling windows and a panoramic view of the city. Marvin had written, "Finally living like an adult. Hatch no more settling. Hatch level up." I remember my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. No more settling. Was that all I had been to him? A settlement? A holding pattern until something flashier came along. I deleted the app that night, but it was too late. His words had carved themselves into me like scars. For weeks, I dragged myself through the days. Work became mechanical. I answered emails, attended meetings, smiled when I had to, and collapsed into bed at night feeling more like a ghost than a person. My friends tried to check in. I brushed them off with excuses. "I'm fine, just busy. I need space." What I really needed was to stop feeling like my life had been graded and found lacking. 2 months passed. One evening my phone rang. The name flashing on the screen made my stomach flip. Naomi, one of my closest friends, and ironically, Marvin's old college buddy. She had introduced us years ago. I considered ignoring her, but curiosity won. "Mona, Naomi," said her voice cautious. "I don't know if I should even be calling, but I'm worried about Marvin." I let out a laugh that sounded more bitter than amused. "You're worried about him? He seems just fine sipping champagne in his sky palace." "That's the thing," she said quickly. "He's not fine. He's different lately. Stressed. On edge. He keeps asking about you, like whether you're dating someone, or if you ever talk about him." I felt something twist inside me. Not hope, not longing, but something I couldn't name. That's not my problem anymore. "Come on, Mona," Naomi pleaded. "You two had something real. Everyone saw it." "If it was real to him, he wouldn't have left," I said flatly. There was silence on the other end. Then Naomi sighed. "He thought Vanessa's world was glamorous, but I think he's in over his head. He looks lost." I wanted to snap back to say I didn't care, but the truth was, her words lingered, threading themselves into the cracks of my resolve. Lost. Over his head. I tried to shove the thoughts away, but they clung like smoke. That night I wandered the apartment like a restless ghost. The same walls Marvin had mocked now felt like they were mocking me. I sat on the couch he had sneered at, clutching a throw pillow as if it could shield me from memories. I told myself I hated him, that I was better off, that I should be grateful he showed his true colors before marriage or kids bound us together. But beneath the anger, another voice whispered, why wasn't I enough? The next few weeks blurred together in a haze of routine. I worked, I ate, I slept, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started making changes. I cleaned the apartment not because Marvin would ever see it again, but because I needed to claim it as mine. I bought a new blanket for the couch, hung a framed print on the wall, even planted a small succulent on the windowsill. It was still the same space, but each change was a quiet rebellion against his scorn. I started cooking again, not for anyone else, just for me. Simple meals, but meals I hadn't made in months. I forced myself to the gym at first out of spite, but eventually because I liked the way my body felt stronger. Little by little, I remembered how to breathe without him. And then one afternoon at work, a colleague mentioned something that made me stop cold. Hey, I think I saw your ex at a coffee shop downtown. He looked rough, kept checking his phone like he was waiting for someone who never showed. My coworker shrugged, unaware of the storm he'd unleashed in my chest. He actually asked about you, wanted to know how you were doing. I forced a smile. And what did you tell him? That you're doing great, he said. Which you are. You look happier lately. I nodded, but inside my emotions were tangled. A part of me still burned with anger at the man who had dismissed me like a shabby old coat. Another part, smaller but undeniable, felt something closer to pity. What was really happening behind those curated Instagram photos? That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Naomi's words and my coworker's comments colliding in my head. Marvin had chosen a world that looked perfect from the outside, but maybe, just maybe, it was already crumbling. I told myself I didn't care. I repeated it like a mantra, but the truth was, curiosity had slipped through the cracks. And curiosity, I was starting to realize, could be dangerous. Time has a strange way of healing and haunting at the same time. By the 3rd month after Marvin left, I no longer cried when I came home to an empty apartment. The silence still pressed on me, but it no longer suffocated. Instead, it gave me space to think. But just when I thought I was finally starting to put him behind me, the universe seemed determined to remind me that ghosts don't disappear, they linger. It started with a hushed conversation in the break room at work. A colleague leaned across the table and said casually, "Hey, didn't you used to date Marvin? I heard he's in trouble." My chest tightened. Trouble how? She shrugged. Someone in finance mentioned his big promotion didn't last. Apparently his perfect lifestyle isn't all it seems. Mortgaged to the hilt. Something about credit cards, too. And Vanessa. Well, she's not exactly sticking around for his personality. She laughed lightly like it was gossip, not my life unraveling again. I forced a smile, but inside something cracked. The image Marvin had painted of himself, this glamorous man living above the city with the woman of his dreams, was starting to rot at the edges. That night, I told myself not to care. His life was no longer mine. Still lying in bed, I couldn't stop wondering. Was it true? Was his shiny world just a house of cards? A week later, I got another uninvited update. Tom, a coworker I only half knew, stopped me in the hallway. Mona, I ran into Marvin at a coffee shop downtown. He looked, well, not good. Tired. Distracted. He kept checking his phone. He actually asked about you. I froze. What did you say? That you were doing great. Which you are right, Tom grinned. Honestly, you look healthier. Happier. I thanked him and walked away before my face betrayed the swirl of emotions inside me. Why was Marvin asking about me? What did he expect, that I'd be pining away, waiting for him to come back once he'd had his fun? That night, I stared at my phone for a long time, thumb hovering over his name in my contacts. Part of me wanted to call to hear his voice to demand answers. Another part, stronger, steadier, forced me to put the phone down. I wouldn't chase him. Not again. Instead, I turned my attention inward. Slowly, almost stubbornly, I began to reclaim pieces of myself that had been buried beneath our relationship. I rearranged the apartment moving furniture not because it needed moving, but because I wanted to see the space differently. I replaced the old couch pillows with new ones, deep green velvet that made the room feel richer, warmer. Cooking became therapy. I experimented with recipes I'd never tried, setting the table for one with candles anyway because I deserved atmosphere even if no one else was there to enjoy it. I dusted off my gym shoes, and though the first run nearly broke me soon, I was running 3 times a week. Each mile was a reminder that my body belonged to me, not to his judgments or dismissals. It wasn't all progress. Some nights, loneliness clawed at me until I curled up on the couch, crying into the green pillows. But those nights grew fewer. For the first time in months, I started to feel whole. And just as that wholeness began to take shape, my phone rang on a Saturday morning. An unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Mona. The voice was unmistakable. Hoarse, desperate, but still his. Marvin. Every muscle in my body went rigid. What do you want? Please don't hang up. His words tumbled out quickly like he was afraid time itself would cut him off. I need to see you. Can we get coffee? Just talk. I swallowed hard. Images of rooftop cocktails, of Vanessa's glittering smile, of his words, no more settling, burned through my mind. My finger hovered over the end call button. I don't think that's a good idea, I said finally. Mona, please. His voice cracked. Things with Vanessa, they went bad. Really bad. I don't have anyone else. I closed my eyes, a bitter laugh bubbling in my chest. Once hearing those words would have shattered me with pity and longing. Now they just made me tired. I'm sorry you're having a hard time. I said, my voice colder than I thought I was capable of. Take care of yourself. And I hung up. He called back twice that day. I didn't answer. Over the next few weeks, I pieced together the rest, from whispers, mutual friends, and the occasional glimpse online. Marvin's glamorous facade had collapsed. The Porsche he'd bragged about repossessed. The penthouse apartment mortgaged beyond reason. Vanessa long gone running off with someone wealthier, leaving Marvin in ruins. But the cruelest truth was this. He hadn't just lost her. He lost everything. His career was faltering, his reputation tarnished. He had gambled everything on an image and ended up alone, clutching the rubble. Friends told me this, like it was a tragedy I should mourn, or maybe a cautionary tale I should find vindicating. But when I thought of Marvin sitting alone in some coffee shop waiting for texts that would never come, I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel satisfaction either. What I felt was nothing. Nothing but a quiet certainty that I had survived. And he had not. It happened on a gray Sunday afternoon, the kind of day when the sky presses low and the air feels heavy. I had just finished folding laundry when my phone buzzed again. This time the number wasn't unfamiliar. It was his, Marvin. For a full minute, I stared at the screen as his name blinked. My first instinct was to let it ring out, to deny him access to my world. But something a mix of curiosity and unfinished business made me swipe. Mona. His voice was thin, strained, almost unrecognizable. Thank you for answering. Please, can we meet just for coffee? 5 minutes. My throat tightened. Why? Because I need to say things I should have said before. Because... His words broke off into silence, followed by a shaky breath. Because I don't know where else to go. I should have said no. I knew it. But against my better judgment, I found myself nodding, even though he couldn't see me. 1 hour. Cafe on 5th. If you're late, I leave. The cafe was crowded, humming with the quiet noise of weekend chatter. I spotted him immediately in the corner. It startled me how different he looked. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair unkempt shadows etched beneath his eyes. Gone was the polished man with floor-to-ceiling windows and rooftop cocktails. He stood when I approached, managing a weak smile. Mona. I sat keeping my coat on. Say what you need to say. For a moment, he just stared at me as though trying to locate the version of me he once knew. Finally, he exhaled. Vanessa's gone. She left months ago. The truth is, she never wanted me. Just the image. And I let myself believe that was enough. I raised an eyebrow. And now, he swallowed hard. Now everything's collapsed. The apartment, the car, the job, they're gone, or soon will be. I've been living on borrowed time, borrowed lies. I don't even recognize myself anymore. His hands trembled as he wrapped them around his coffee cup. Mona, I was wrong. About everything. About you. About us. About this place we built together. I see it now. I had something real, and I threw it away. I watched him feeling a strange detachment. Once these words would have made me sob with relief, with hope. Now they just sounded hollow. You wanted more than safe and predictable, I reminded him. You found it. Chaos. Destruction. Was it worth it? His face crumpled. No. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the hiss of the espresso machine. I looked at him closely, waiting for anger or grief to rise in me, but all I felt was calm. "What do you want from me, Marvin?" I asked quietly. His eyes flicked to mine, desperate. "I want a second chance. I want to come home. To you." I let out a small laugh, sharp and humorless. "Home. You looked around that home once and saw nothing but shame. You spat on the life we had. Do you think I could just forget that?" He leaned forward, urgency sharpening his voice. "I was blind, Mona. Stupid. You were good to me, and God, I destroyed it. Please, let me fix it. Let me prove I can be the man you deserve." I held his gaze. "You already proved something, Marvin. You proved exactly who you are." He flinched. For the first time, he had no comeback. I took a slow sip of my coffee. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. "I don't need you. Not anymore. Whatever I felt for you, it's gone, and you can't beg your way back into my life." His shoulders sagged, as though my words had drained the last of his strength. He nodded slowly, staring into his cup like it might hold the answer. "Mona," he whispered, "I have nowhere to go." I placed a few dollars on the table and stood. "There are shelters, friends, solutions that don't involve me. I'm not your safety net." He looked up, eyes glistening, but I didn't falter. I picked up my bag, wrapped my scarf tighter, and walked out of the cafe. The door closed behind me with a sharp jingle of the bell, and with it something inside me closed too. For the first time, I wasn't the abandoned one. I was the one walking away. And God, it felt like freedom. It was a Thursday evening when I came home from the gym, sweat still clinging to my skin, headphones draped around my neck. The building's stairwell smelled faintly of detergent and dust. As I turned the corner, I froze. He was there, Marvin, sitting on the steps outside my apartment like a stray dog waiting for scraps. His head was bowed, his clothes rumpled. When he looked up, I barely recognized him. His face was thinner shadows carved under his eyes, and the arrogance that once defined him had drained away. "Mona," he said, rising quickly to his feet. My chest tightened with annoyance more than pain. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you." His voice cracked. "Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. He followed, eyes darting around the apartment like he was seeing it for the first time. His jaw dropped. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Mona, this place looks incredible." I glanced around. It wasn't much a bigger TV I'd saved for new pillows, a few plants on the sill, artwork on the walls. It wasn't luxury, but it was intentional. It was mine. "Thanks," I said curtly. "Now tell me why you're here." He turned back to me, desperation glinting in his eyes. "I was wrong. About everything. About you. About us. About this place." His hand swept toward the room as though he could erase the memory of his disgust. "I can see it now. You built a home, Mona, a real one, and I threw it away like an idiot." I folded my arms. "You didn't just throw it away. You spat on it." He flinched. "I know, and I regret it more than you'll ever believe. I thought I needed more something exciting, something bigger. But all it gave me was emptiness. Vanessa, the apartment, the parties, it was all smoke. I traded gold for ashes. I studied him. He wasn't lying. That much was clear. But regret doesn't rewind time. "What do you want, Marvin?" I asked. He took a step closer. "I want to come back, to help you here, to start over. Please, Mona. I'll cook, clean, do anything, just until I get back on my feet." The words stung not because I wanted them, but because they reduced me to charity. "So you want a roof and meals until you can stand again." His face twisted. "No, I want you. Us. Another chance." I shook my head slowly. "No, you want comfort, and I'm not your comfort anymore." Tears welled in his eyes. The proud man who once dismissed me as safe and predictable was gone. In his place was someone small and raveling. He reached for my hand. "Mona, I love you. I never stopped. Please don't let me drown." I pulled away. "I did love you. Once. Past tense." He stared at me, disbelief breaking across his face. "You don't mean that." "I do. Whatever tether bound us, you cut it the moment you looked at our life and called it pathetic. That moment destroyed something I can't rebuild." His tears spilled freely now, ugly and raw. "I made a mistake, a huge one. I see it now. You were good to me, Mona, real, and I threw it away for nothing." I stood still watching him cry. Once the sight would have shattered me. Now it stirred nothing. No pity, no anger, just distance. "You made your choice," I said softly, "and I made mine. I forgive you, Marvin, but forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. It means I'm done carrying this weight. He searched my face, desperately looking for a crack. When he found none, his shoulders slumped. He nodded faintly, though I could see he didn't understand. Not really. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything. For saying those things. For leaving. For hurting you. I know, I said. But sorry doesn't change who we became. I walked to the door and opened it. The gesture was clear. Goodbye, Marvin. He hesitated, eyes shimmering with unspoken words. Finally, he stepped past me, pausing only once at the threshold. Will you ever think about it? About us? No, I said firmly. Not anymore. The door clicked shut behind him, and with it a chapter of my life closed for good. I stood in the quiet apartment, taking in the soft glow of the lamps, the warmth of the green pillows, the smell of the basil plant on the sill. This wasn't the pathetic home he had once mocked. It was mine, and I wasn't sharing it with his shadow any longer. 6 months passed before I realized how light my heart had become. The weight of Marvin's shadow, once pressing on every corner of my life, had lifted. It wasn't an overnight miracle. Healing came in small, stubborn choices, one new pillow, one cooked meal, one morning run at a time. By the time the leaves began to turn, my apartment no longer whispered of him. It pulsed with my rhythm. My books lined the shelves in neat rows, plants cascaded from the windowsill, and the once second-hand couch now wore a soft throw I had knitted myself during long, quiet evenings. Every detail spoke of me, not us, and for the first time that felt like enough. But life has a way of filling spaces you thought would stay empty. It happened at a little cafe a few blocks from my office, the kind of place with chipped mugs and a chalkboard menu. I was there on a rainy Tuesday, hunched over my laptop, when the man at the next table leaned toward me with a smile. Your scarf's about to fall into your coffee, he said. I looked up startled, then laughed as I yanked the wool away just in time. Guess I'm a hazard to myself. Or maybe just multitasking too hard, he said, grinning. I'm Daniel. That was the beginning. Daniel was a teacher, the kind of man who carried a backpack instead of a briefcase, whose stories overflowed with mischievous students and unexpected moments of tenderness. He wasn't flashy. He didn't drive a Porsche or order $1,000 bottles of wine. But he had a warmth that wrapped around me like a blanket. When he laughed, it wasn't polished, it was real. And when he looked at me, I felt seen, not judged. Our first dates were simple coffee walks, bookstore browsing, cooking dinner at my place. I waited for the unease to come, the voice in my head whispering that I wasn't enough, that someone else might be more exciting. But it never came. With Daniel, I never had to prove my worth. I just had to be. One evening, he sat on my couch, the same couch Marvin had once mocked, and sighed happily. This place feels so cozy, like it's hugging you. I blinked, startled. You really think so? Of course. He looked at me as though it were obvious. It feels lived in. Loved. That's rare. The words pierced me, not with pain, but with healing. For so long, I had carried Marvin's disdain like a secret shame, convincing myself that maybe our life really had been small, pathetic. But hearing Daniel call it love that rewrote everything. We grew into each other naturally. He fit into my circle of friends with ease, laughing at their stories, adding his own. When I met his colleagues, they welcomed me warmly. There were no comparisons, no measuring of status or ambition, just simple acceptance. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for abandonment. Sometimes I caught myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to glance around my apartment and sneer, for him to crave something shinier, bigger, louder. But every time Daniel disarmed those fears with small, steady gestures, bringing me flowers from the corner stand, fixing a wobbly chair without being asked, slipping a note into my book that said, I love our little life. One night, as we cooked dinner together, me chopping vegetables, him stirring sauce, he looked up and said casually, You know, I think this is my favorite part of the day. What as I asked, half distracted? Just this, being here with you, doing something ordinary together. The words stopped me mid-chop. Ordinary. The very thing Marvin had despised. But Daniel said it like it was a gift, like it was sacred. I set the knife down, blinking back unexpected tears. Me too, I whispered. He reached across the counter, brushing his flour-dusted fingers over mine. Then we're lucky, aren't we? Yes, lucky. Not because life was grand or glamorous, but because it was real. Because I had finally found someone who didn't see safety as a flaw or predictability as a cage. Someone who saw me, my home, my choices, my heart, and called it enough. Maybe even more than enough. As autumn deepened, I realized something else I no longer thought about Marvin daily. Weeks could pass without his name crossing my mind. When it did, it carried no sting, no ache, just the faint memory of someone I used to know. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and now it was ours. Daniel once told me that teaching children taught him the value of small victories. The first word a student read aloud the moment a struggling kid solved a math problem. It's never the big leaps, he said. It's the small steps that matter. I smiled when he said it because I realized the same was true of me. I hadn't healed in leaps. I had healed in steps. Each one small, but together they had carried me into a new beginning. And I wasn't walking it alone. A year after Marvin had walked out of my life for good, his name resurfaced one last time. I was sitting in a cafe with Naomi sipping lattes and catching up on work gossip when she hesitated mid-sentence. Her eyes softened, and I knew what was coming before she spoke. "Mona, I ran into Marvin last week." I let out a breath, and she stirred her coffee, avoiding my gaze. "He's working a smaller job now. Nothing glamorous. Renting a tiny studio apartment in a part of town he used to mock. He asked about you." Of course he did. I raised my eyebrows. "And what did you tell him?" "That you're doing well. He wanted me to tell you he's different now. That he knows what he lost." I leaned back in my chair, letting her words hang in the air. Once they would have gutted me, sparked that tiny flame of hope. But now they barely registered as more than weather, something that existed but didn't touch me. "Okay," I said simply. Naomi frowned. "That's it? Just okay, Mona, you two." "We weren't good together, Naomi." I cut her off gently. "We were comfortable. That's different. And comfort without respect isn't love." Her eyes lingered on me, searching for bitterness. But there was none left, only clarity. That evening, I came home to Daniel already in the kitchen, humming, while he chopped vegetables. The smell of garlic filled the air. My apartment glowed in warm, lamplight plants, spilling across the sill books stacked neatly by the couch. It was the same space Marvin once mocked. But now it felt transformed not by furniture or paint, but by love that honored it. Daniel looked up, grinning. "Hey you, dinner's almost ready." I slipped off my coat, warmth spreading through me. "Smells amazing." He kissed my temple as I passed him, then returned to stirring the sauce. Long day. "Not bad," I said, smiling to myself, just full of reminders. Later after dinner, we curled up on the couch together, the one Marvin had called secondhand and pathetic. Daniel stretched his arm around me, pulling the throw blanket over us. "I love this couch," he murmured. "It's perfect for nights like this." I laughed softly, resting my head on his shoulder. "Yeah, it really is." For a moment, I let my mind wander back to Marvin, to the night he stood in this very room, dripping disdain, to the words that had haunted me, "I feel sorry for whatever man settles for this." And I realized something startling. I didn't feel anger anymore, or sorrow. I felt pity, but not for myself, for him, because he would never understand that what he had once dismissed as settling was the very thing that made life rich. Love isn't about skylines or champagne. It's about laughter in the kitchen, comfort in silence, safety in someone's arms. Marvin had traded that away, believing he was leveling up, when in truth, he had leveled himself down into loneliness. I glanced at Daniel, who had dozed off beside me, his breathing slow and steady. He didn't need me to be dazzling or ambitious or extraordinary. He just needed me to be me. And in return, he gave me the same. That was more than enough. I kissed the top of his head, pulling the blanket tighter around us. My eyes flicked once more across the apartment, the basil plant on the sill, the velvet pillows, the shelves lined with stories. This was home, my home. And for the first time in years, I felt completely, utterly at peace. Marvin had been right about one thing, though. He would have been settling if he'd stayed. Not because my life wasn't good enough, but because he wasn't happy enough with himself to appreciate it. In the end,